Canboulay Training and Development, along with myself and my amazing guests, Sadie and Karen. We are talking to you today from the unceded lands of the Coquitlam people. Our work is intended to benefit the women of Coquitlam and their families as we look to break the silence. Happy International Women's Day. Hi, and welcome to Canboulay Training and Development's podcast. Today is our second show. We are so delighted to have you. My name is Camille Mc Millan Rambharat, and we are going to be discussing breaking the bias. As you may be aware, it's International Women's Day, and I have two amazing allies, friends, mentors, guardians. Yeah, you guys can stop blushing. Who are going to introduce themselves. I would start with the marvelous Sadie, and we have just as marvelous and funny Karen. So who would like to start first? Let's go with Sadie, because you have been in this forever.
Yeah, way too long. I'm Sadie Kuehn, and some of you know that I've been involved in education and counseling for years and years and years. And I've constantly engaged in human rights and women's rights matters over, 50 years in BC.
You look 42, girl.
Don't tell my oldest son that, because he always goes, "Oh, no, Mom, they thought you were my girlfriend, not my mother."
Oh, no.
And I'll pass it on to Karen.
Yeah. Hi, Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen Sang. And I think my son would die 1,000 deaths if I were mistaken for his girlfriend, but that's not going to happen because I had my kids really late, and my hairdresser is always telling me that I shouldn't look like their grandma.
Ooh, you need to change. You need to change hairdressers.
She's wonderful. I've had her for longer than I've had my husband, and that's a long time.
Okay, she's
since
a keeper.
I was 18. Mm-hmm. She is a keeper.
Yeah, she's a keeper.
Candace.
Yeah. Wow. Tell us about you.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised in a family that understood that human rights had to be fought for, and so was a kid who was on the streets, during the protests around nuclear armaments and such. Mm-hmm. And as a neurodiverse person, I'm quite attached to figuring out what the truth is and things, and not in a deep dive conspiracy theory kind of a way, but based on the patterns.
Mm-hmm. Okay, welcome. So this is just going to be a conversation. We can jump in. I know when we started our sound check, we are all speaking at the same time, and we promised to give each other that space to complete our thought. So, break the bias. And as many of you may not know, Canboulay Training and Development is built around safe workplaces. Due to my experience of workplace bullying and harassment, being biased, right, of being the Black woman who is bringing a complaint against someone who doesn't look like me, but everyone else looks like her and is trying to keep me silent. So let's speak about breaking the bias about so many things in the workplace. Where should we start? Anyone, not at the same time, because there's so much. Let's start with antiracism.
Well, anti-racism obviously is I've always been surprised at how long and hard it's been to get us Canadians to actually talk about matters like anti-racism. And even the discussion about using the terms or such terms as people of color and indigenous peoples, rather than other terminology that's been used. And I mean, the official term for us folk that have more melanin is visible minority, as you know, in legal terms, in much of Canadian law, and obviously that needs to change. The Antiracism is something that should not be seen as a threat or a challenge to any grouping. What it really defines is being willing as a community, a group of people, to say we are very diverse and inclusive, and we will not tolerate other folks being taken advantage of or having disadvantage in what we want, which is a just society. It actually helps us all to move forward, regardless of our background and race and how we identify ourselves.
And you are in it forever. We, Karen and I, come after you and we stand on your shoulders. Why hasn't it changed? Because this is like why my husband said recently, stop asking why and just it is how it is. But I'm going to ask why. Why is it taking it so long? Because before you, and you being an American, would know so much.
Yeah. Growing up, being born in the U.S. and growing up in the U.S., being raised in the Deep South. I was raised in Georgia. During the years of segregation, I was a part of groupings of people who challenged the rules and the laws that existed that limited the possibility of equal education, equal housing, equal access to jobs and food. I learned a lot doing that process about what it meant to be female. And I wrote this at one point in, I can't remember, Kinesis or a women's magazine in Canada, and what it meant to be Black, and what it meant to be poor, but in terms of what you were allowed to accomplish and make, not in terms of your level of education, your ability to be educated, right? And I think for many people that they really, even when they talk about racism and its impact and or slavery, they really missed the mark because slavery wasn't a part of people singing and dancing and having fun out in the fields. It was a part of brutal physical labor for many people. And not only that, the commitment to wipe out all possibility of you knowing your earlier language, any skills that you may have had other than following the dictates of the person who paid money for you and basically owned you. And for Black women, right, you couldn't even protect your own sexuality. And you weren't allowed to have families. You could have a husband or a child, but at any time, both your child and or your husband could be sold someplace else. It was a way of breaking the spirit, right? And language, we know, connects us to who we are.
Okay, so I promise not to cry, and Karen is like shaking her head like so much. That's why I love you as an ally. Breaking the spirit.
Yeah.
Breaking the spirit. As you all know, my spirit was broken when I was brutally attacked at my job because of needing to take time off from work to heal. and I refuse to. Breaking the spirit. And my spirit has been broken, you guys know, for like 3 years. And that whole slavery mentality and breaking the Black woman, it comes back to being on the job, white women having to navigate, to please and to just, without having our spirits broken. And mine has been broken, and I've been told I am not to speak about that, which of course I'm probably from the tribe that I'm rebellious, so I'm going to speak about it. I'm going to speak about. Okay, so Karen, I love you so much. You are such an ally. You are such a fighter. You make no apologies for speaking your truth, not just for yourself, but for everyone. And speak your truth. That's why you're here.
Well, I think that I have experiences from growing up that are little tastes of something that you all talk about. And so it makes me more sensitive to see the bigger picture. I don't have to carry in your whole history to see that that the othering and the making something out of nothing to make people, Black people, Indigenous people, to make them targetable, because I was targeted. And I think that it's also not as hard as people make it out to be to stop that. But you have to want to see it first. It's not hard to see.
It's not. And that's why I said to Sadie just now, like, it's been going on forever.
So an art history friend of mine told me that in the time of Napoleon, they were erasing Black people, the Moors, out of the paintings that we all see of Europe, which means that our imagination of Europe is a white Europe, which is a lie. We know that that Italy was a very multicultural place in the 15th century or 16th. I don't remember what the century was, but like incredibly multicultural. And we know that people have traveled the world forever and mixed. So that idea of one place being white, I have an exercise I make people do sometimes, and I say, close your eyes and think about who you think of as a Canadian.
That's been a hard one.
Because I had to make myself do that. You know, anything I do for other people, it's like I already did it for myself. Oh my God, if I hear the word Canadian, I first think of a white person. And by the way, I was reminded today or yesterday that the visible minority is the majority of the world. Like, that's how nonsensical, right? And someone reminded me, someone writing reminded me, and it's like, yeah, I really have to hold on to that and stop the language that's being used to
perpetuate a particular kind of attitude and behavior, right? And superiority of one group over another.
Superiority complex. I grew up with adults who had superiority complexes, and that is exactly what you see.
And I guess my challenge is in looking at these patterns and situations and thinking about how do we shift those attitudes, is to try to support everyone to recognize that our humanness is interconnected with everyone else, right? We cannot survive, and we will not survive. And if anything, that this current situation in the world is telling us right now is that we must put the crap aside.
It's time,
and make sure that we are paying attention to everyone, because if one group falls, we all fall.
It is dominoes.
And we cannot now pretend we don't know what that's about. When we see what's happening in Europe right now in terms of Ukraine, how everyone is on board and stopping the crap because they all get it. Right? We need to take that same sense of urgency and commitment to ending, not just stopping, ending racism, sexism, and all forms of bigotry. But we also recognize that there is a real thing around anti-Blackness.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is happened to the Moors. Very few people know that there were a group of people that were just extremely smart and who brought math and, toilets, and we can go through the list to Europe, for heaven's sakes. Yeah. They don't know it. When you read, though, Spanish history, some Italian history, some French history, you realize that Black people had a substantive impact on all of those cultures. And unlike English history, although there is that nursery rhyme about Timbuktu that is British-centered, but most other things about Black people and Moors in that history and in the art have been erased. Yeah. Most folk who say that, well, they came over on the Mayflower, pretend like they don't know that Black folks were in England, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And Wales and all those places, right? Although they do talk about the Black Irish. Again, how do we get folks to remember, right? Because there's a writer that talks about the culture that binds, right? And the fact that we are connected, and that there is genetic memory of us being together, right?
I believe.
I've experienced that.
I believe,
How, okay, let's get back to that. And the fear of losing power and place.
Yeah.
What is power and what is place if in fact we aren't creating and supporting a just and fair society and culture and community for absolutely everyone? I can't have it if you don't have it. And you can't have it if you don't have it. I mean, or you don't have it. I mean, that's the reality, but it is a hard concept. But who wants to give up power? Everyone should want to share power because that makes it much more grandiose and broad.
Go ahead.
And I want to address that because I was talking to one of my kids, our teens, right? You and I both have teens, and this is a really hard time for them watching the television explode with war, where it doesn't usually, even though there are incursions in places. If for example, if our side or our military is invading, we don't see it the same way as we're seeing the Ukraine right now, because the narrative doesn't suit the power bases.
Exactly.
But like at my core, and the reason why I can keep showing up, and I think this is true for both of you as well, I know it is for Sadie, is an optimist. Someone once called me a pessimist for speaking of things that weren't working. And I said, the people around this table are optimists. They still show up. The pessimists are out there not showing up. But I think that,
I was recently called the tongue crier. But that's another podcast. Because I'm speaking of these things, right?
Sure.
And someone said to me, you don't have to be the tongue crier. I'm like, first of all, if I were a man, you would not say that to me. And I'm not the tongue crier. It is saying, hey, this is happening. The world is burning. Let's all do something about it.
I'm confused about what's wrong with the town crier. I'd be like, heck yeah, I'm the town crier. Like, who am I? Right? So this thing about optimism, I kind of picture, if an entity is attacked, it will attack back. I think the messiness of the world right now is partly because, look at Bridgerton. The hot hunky lead was a Black man, right? Like we are seeing a mixed race cast in historical English dramas. So when we can put it into our collective imagination, we're closer to that place. And what do you think the power structures are going to do? right? They're going to fight back.
That's right.
I'm good with that, except for where people are actually physically getting hurt, or like when you are attacked. I'm not okay with that. But I do recognize that the measures that power structures are taking right now, the way that they close us down at the school board, the way that I was saying to Sadie this morning, the police out east in Ottawa, where they're looking at the problems of their structures, they too often say to their board, oh, that's operational. You can't talk about that. And that's what we're hearing at the school boards. Oh, no, trustees can't talk about that. That's operational. So our representatives can't talk about the very core of our institutions. I think that's pushback on us breaking these systems down so that all of us count. And the work that Sadie has done forever, right? This is where we see the effects of that. And I'm glad that you're here to see the things, the seeds that you've planted grow into trees. Right?
I'm one of those trees.
Heck yeah, and our roots are interconnected.
Right. Well, that's right. We are intertwined.
We are.
That's the piece that, to me, that we have to look at our history and honor what has gone before, right? As well as look forward and cherish what is, and then moving forward, build on the things that have happened. Right?
Yeah. So it is, we'll be back for so many things because we definitely have to focus on I follow you and you speak so much about, because I think a lot of people have forgotten about the First Nation children. And I love how you keep that going, that conversation, right? Because so many things are going, but Karen, you post about it, and it's not discovering children, it's
the stories that were always there.
Yeah.
I've heard them since I was involved in the fight for the forests. I heard people talk about those things. I didn't know everything about the residential school system, but my family is entwined in that too, and not in a positive way. So we have responsibilities to undo the things of our ancestors.
Thank you for saying that. Could you say it again for those? Because people always say, oh, we need to move on. So what if my ancestors did mean things and were, slave masters?
Well, it's not going to get undone. It's not going to get undone.
Exactly. Break the bias.
Without the work, right?
Yeah,
it's not going to get undone without me talking to my family and friends. And, I mean, I post things about the children and the ways that modern science is telling us what we already knew to be true. I post it for my skin kin, right? So that they don't have a choice but to bear witness. And I see change over time. I see more of them learning things and learning to be more humble.
Yeah.
Right? But it takes time and it takes pressure and it takes them showing up and then talking to their, it's that shampoo. It's that shampoo ad, and we told two friends and we told two friends.
And those two friends,
it's the exponential growth of information, right? Like just telling people that people were painted out of history, which is why their imagination isn't broad.
Yeah.
Makes their imagination broader.
Makes sense.
It encourages it.
Right?
Yeah. We are running out of time. And like I said, we can go on and on forever. You said something that really just slipped me because there's so much to say. But before we wrap up, for International Women's Day, what messages each of you quickly would like to leave our audience with? And I know I'm putting you guys on the spot. You guys will go first because then I would think about something. So Sadie, you go.
I think what I would like to leave with the audience is that it's International Women's Day on March 8th, and that what it has always been to me, certainly about women's work and the kind of work that women have always done in terms of family, outside of the household as well as inside the household, and helping helping support and build community. Right?
Yeah.
And that that has been a long legacy of women, and it is something that needs to be honored and cherished, because they have also held the history not only of their families but of communities, and have been the major teachers in all that. So for all of us to take time and to give thanks and to recognize the women in our lives, and in our community.
Thank you so much. I see you, Sadie. I recognize you. Thank you. Karen.
I think that I want to bring in rest.
Oh,
I want you to rest. I want Indigenous women to rest. I want women of color to rest. And I also want white women to rest, but I want us to rest in sorrow for the things that we have been born of, so that we can rest in sorrow and become determined to be part of the undoing. So, different rest for different people, but the being prepared for these, and I don't want to call them battles. I don't want to use war language for rebuilding. Right? As women, our connections to each other, without the biases. The biases are so silly themselves when you get stuck in them. And to rest and be able to let go of them, and to be sad about historical things for a moment, not on others alone, or, with some people of your community, but not leaving it on others, and then be ready to do the work.
Yeah. And stop asking Black and brown folk to do the work.
Well, because my work is to understand about my history, and my history is shared with yours, and not in a way that's really nice for me to reflect upon, but it's important.
Yeah.
Right? And it doesn't hurt to do it. It actually heals.
Yeah, it does. Thank you so much. So for me, International Women's Day, I keep saying this to both of you, I am a baby in this struggle. I think a struggle that chose me. I did not choose it, because the ancestors who came before me, I really thought that Martin and Malcolm and everyone was like, right? Like, I really couldn't, if anyone told me that there would be a time that I would be sitting here having to speak up about injustice and equality for women, equal pay, and so rest, right? You spoke about that, how important it is for us to rest. Interestingly enough, I wasn't allowed to rest, with my doctor's note saying I need to be off. I wasn't allowed that. And even going further with because my thing is, it's to hold people accountability. That's what I know. When I was growing up, you'll be held accountable, right? And to be even told by within that group who is supporting that person, to question my brown doctor's way of writing her medical note. And how many other women have to plead for rest. I know women who I actually know a young lady who is at the hospital about to do surgery for cancer, and HR is calling her to say, where's your medical note? Rest. And we need to heal, we need to acknowledge, we need to love each other. Women across the board, we are exhausted. Careers, spouses, we are doing so much all at the same time. And we leave you from this beautiful station with such love, peace, togetherness, and hopefully our children don't have to carry this burden, because Sadie, this is a burden. Some days I get up and, to use your words, Karen, when I when I'm coming down with the PTSD flu. And I don't know how I honor every person who went before me, and I'm grateful to be sharing this space with you guys.
It was a terrific time to be able to sit here and chat with the two of you about these issues. And the more light we can place on these issues, the more, I think, hope that we all have about the possibilities of change.
Yeah.
Meaningful change.
Meaningful change. Yeah. Okay, so thank you so very much for joining us, our lovely audience. Continue to follow us on social media and drop us a line. Let us know what topics would you love to hear about. I always love having these two ladies. It's so much, it's so rich, it's so spiritual right now. And our producer's like looking at us right now. It's the only gentleman in the room, so he's like, right? He's like looking at us. And Mo, thank you so very much for coming out. We love you so much. And thank you all. And check out Canboulay.ca or at Canboulay Training for more. Peace be with you guys.